Welcome to Draft Week, everybody. It's the Locked On Vikings podcast. Ooh-wee!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Draft Week on the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL, shows on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. It's Monday. You know what that means. You got to know what that means. It's Mock Draft Monday. It's the last Mock Draft Monday before the actual real draft. So we are taking this one more seriously than we have taken any of the other drafts that we've done here. We're going to do one that we're going to try to make it as good as we can. No restrictions, all 7 rounds and all that stuff. None of this. I can only draft people that I haven't drafted. Nope, we can take anybody. Whole board's available. All the trades we can muster. Let's see if we can't construct the best possible draft and really decide how I want the Vikings to navigate the board. That's really what this exercise is. So let's get into it. I do have a horizontal draft board that I will put up on the screen if you're on YouTube. If you're not on YouTube, I'll post this at some point on Twitter later. What's up on the screen right now isn't exactly finalized. I still might do some tweaks to it and stuff, but this is roughly the vibe that I'm going for here, where I'm making conscious decisions about, okay, would I take that player at 12? Would I trade up for him? Would I take him, but only if we traded down? Would I take him in the second round? What about day 3? Where about in day 3? And kind of trying to put those names in like motivated, intentional places instead of just kind of ranking them all, kind of saying like, okay, how many of these players would I take at 12? If you'll notice, if you're looking at the board, there are fewer than 12 players that I would take at 12, which is actually pretty rare. I'm usually higher on guys than that. I'm not very high on the top end of this particular draft class. And unfortunately, as we are up at 12 in this particular sim, I'm using the Draft Network sim, none of them are available. That means, no Sauce Gardner, that's a pipe dream, no Kyle Hamilton, no Derek Stingley, no Travon Walker, and none of the guys that I would actually trade up for, Hamilton, Gardner, and Walker, were even close. All those guys were gone well before it became like close enough to trade up, which means if you were looking for a tackle, if you're like the Giants or something, you made out pretty well. So that means it's time to start looking at a trade down. And for that, I got to look at who's on the board still, right? And maybe the best player left on the board, pure BPA, is Jermaine Johnson out of FSU, who I'm not particularly that interested in. I'm not a huge fan of him, but I know other teams will be, and the Chargers will be. So I'm going to try to trade down with the Chargers. And I ended up getting them to give me a 3rd rounder to move up. Now, Jermaine Johnson probably shouldn't have fallen this far. He's kind of the guy that fell because everybody else went a little higher than they should have. So I think the Chargers are actually getting reasonable value here, but it's more than you would usually get for going from 12 to 17. So I'm perfectly happy with it. And I'm going to go down to pick number 17. And now basically everybody that I would take, but only if we traded down, I feel a little bit better about. And it sort of opens up more of my board. That's kind of the way that I'm thinking about this. So we're at 17, and then a bidding war happens. Both Desmond Ridder and Kenny Pickett are on the board. And on the particular draft sim that I'm using, both of those guys are seen as late 1st round quarterbacks, and the Steelers and Bucks won in. So I got offers from both the Steelers and the Bucks that seemed a little outlandish to move up, but it's because of the quarterback tax, I think. So I kind of said, all right, either the sim's broken or it's the quarterback tax, but either way, it's kind of realistic. When there's a quarterback involved, trades get more expensive. So I thought, all right, let's leverage this. Let's see if we can't get one of these trades to go. Now, what I want more than anything in the world this draft is to pick up a 1st rounder next year. If we're going to trade down, let's trade way down and pick up a 2023 first, have 2 1st rounders next year. That would be super, super sick. So I'm going to try that with Tampa Bay. They pick all the way down at 27th. And here's the deal. At this point in the draft, I'm sitting at pick number 17. There are only 7 players left that I have a 1st round grade on at all. Everybody else is taken. Those 7 players are Andrew Booth, Dax Hill, Lewis Seen, Devonte Wyatt, Jordan Davis, George Karlaftis, and Devin Lloyd. Everybody after that, I think, is only a second round player. So I have to get one of those players, which means I don't feel very comfortable moving down to pick 27. That's moving too far. That's moving 10 picks, and I only have 7 players that I like. I might miss out on all those guys. And keep in mind that this is Vikings specific. So like I have Charles Cross and Trevor Penning in the second round on my board. That's just because tackle is so solved for the Vikings. The group is so set that those guys would have to be falling so far for me to like justify taking them. I think Charles Cross will probably go before the Vikings pick, honestly. But only if you fell to the second round would I actually advocate for the Vikings to take him. At that point, the value would be too good to pass up. So before you come at me about my big board, know that it is like Viking specific, need influenced, all that stuff. It's not actually my position rankings. I'm not actually that low on Charles Cross. But I digress. I don't want to move all the way down to 27, but what I can do is move to 27 and then move back up if I have to get one of my guys. But if I'm going to deal with all that, I need a first rounder. So I tried to offer Tampa Bay my first rounder for their first rounder this year and next year, and they wouldn't take it unless I threw in picks from this year, which I thought was a little bit too much. I don't want to move back that far. I still want to get a guy that I have a first round grade on. So I took the Steelers deal, which was a third rounder next year. So I got a third rounder this year and a third rounder next year for moving back from 12 to 20. We've actually done that mock draft before with taking basically that offer, but all from the Steelers, from Christopher Carter at Locked On Steelers. So I'm okay with that value, but we're up at 20, and actually none of my 7 went. So I actually could then trade back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but now they're not interested because the quarterbacks went. The Steelers traded up and took Desmond Ridder. Kenny Pickett went to the Saints at 19. Zion Johnson happened to go. And so all my guys are still up, and I actually still get my choice of those 7 guys, but I'm going to pick now. The trade down market isn't quite as steep. The quarterback thing isn't there, and I'm ready to make my pick. For that, I went with Devonte Wyatt out of Georgia. Now, before you all freak out, I know I took another defensive tackle and they already have Tomlinson and Harrison Phillips and all that stuff. This guy's on the field every play. Harrison Phillips probably isn't. And it's also why I'm taking him over Jordan Davis, because Jordan Davis at Georgia was a 2-down player. He'd probably be a 2-down player in the pros. I want a 3-down player. If I'm going to spend my first round pick on a guy, I want him to be on the field all day. And here's the deal. This is not the biggest need for the Vikings. I think we all know that, right? They need a cornerback worse. Booth was still there. I could have taken Booth. I'm not as high on him as everybody else is, though. And I could have taken like Dax Hill or Lewis Seen and helped the secondary a little bit more. I traded past McDuffie. I could have taken McDuffie at 12, but I traded down past him. I'm pretty comfortable with that. He went higher than I would have been comfortable taking him. And then, of course, all the other guys, Sauce and Stingley, weren't there, and I don't think anybody else is worth a first-round pick. So I got to really focus on the secondary for the rest of the draft, and I've given myself capital to do that, so I feel okay about it. And Devonte Wyatt, this dude is a baller. Like, this dude is probably a top 15 worthy player, and I'm getting him at 20. And so I'm okay with the positional redundancy. And I don't even think it's a redundancy. In your base formation, you have Wyatt lining up next to Harrison Phillips and Dalvin Tomlinson, and then Harrison Phillips goes off in the nickel. And then you have Tomlinson and Wyatt next to each other. This dude is a 3-down player. And right now that role is occupied by Armand Watts? Like, we kind of do have a need there. So I love this. And the thing about him is that he is a pass rusher first and foremost. We got a lot of run stuffing D tackles. Again, that's why I'm a little less high on Jordan Davis. But Wyatt is a pass rusher. He's got all kinds of great moves. His hands are fantastic. He's really cerebral about it. You know, if he's rushing the A gap, he will give you a jab step to the B gap so he can force the guard to overset. It's really, really veteran stuff. It's a very technically refined pass rush. And he's really, really active with his hands, maybe a little uncontrolled with his hands, but that's a pretty minor problem you can live with, if not just easily fix. And he's just really, really slippery. It's really difficult to keep hands on him, and he's disruptive. What you notice when you watch Devonte Wyatt on tape is that he's always the one influencing someone else. And it's kind of a matter of, did he push that guy as far as he pushed the other guy last time? And people don't push him around a lot. And if they do, it's hard for them to keep their mitts on him. So I really, really love the front that we have going right now, where you basically have this like terrorizing pass rusher in the middle with Harrison Phillips and Dalvin Tomlinson kind of clogging things up. And then you have Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith roving around, taking advantage of the one-on-ones that kind of necessitates. That will also help the secondary. This is kind of symbiotic too, so it'll help the secondary, and I feel really good. And look, secondary needs a lot of help, but We've got all of day 2 for that, and now we have an extra 3rd round pick that we can use. We can trade up and get our guy if we want, or we can just pick there, which is what I end up doing. And I do a lot of secondary help for that. But first things first, let me talk to you about AG1 by Athletic Greens. Your gut health is kind of an underrated thing about health that people really should be paying attention to. With the flora in your gut, and the bacteria that grow there can control your cravings, and it can have an effect on your health and how much you sleep and all sorts of stuff you would never have any idea. AG1 is a vitamin supplement that basically helps to make all that gut flora the kind that you want. It's just a scoop a day in a cup of water. That's all you have to do every morning. And that's it. It costs you less than $3 a day. It's probably cheaper than what you spend on coffee. It's cheaper than getting all those different supplements yourself, which is the problem the founder of Athletic Greens had, that he had gut health issues and had to take all these crazy supplements, and it was uber expensive. So he came up with a much cheaper way to get all of that in one go and then not have to take 10 million pills. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews, and it comes recommended by even some professional athletes. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Before we continue on with this mock draft, I got to tell you about the ultimate mock draft, which is going on at Locked On. It's almost finished. The last one is coming out on Monday. You guys should maybe tune into it. Go find the ultimate mock draft anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. And also check out the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube channel, which is where we're going to have a live show on the actual weekend. And you're going to see me come up on that as well, all over the place. Let's continue here with this particular mock draft, though. So we got Devonte Wyatt. Our front is dope as hell, but we need to have a secondary that can take advantage of that. And I still think that there are definitely players that can do that. So here's what I'm doing. Dax Hill and Lewis Cine are way out of reach. Those guys went at the back half of the first round. But there are 2 guys that I think can really help the Vikings that should be there around where we pick in round 2. Jaquan Brisker and Jalen Peter. If those 2 guys are there at 46, I would slam it, especially if you don't take a corner in the first round. These 2 guys are the guys that make me feel okay about not taking a corner in the first round and just basically going with what I thought was best player available. So basically, I'm just watching these 2 guys like a hawk, and if one of them gets taken, I'm going to trade up and take the next one. And that happens a lot. That's how you get runs on positions. So what happens is they actually all fall down to pick number 44. The Browns take Jaquan Brisker at pick number 44, which means I am taking Jalen Peter, and I just need to trade up one spot with the Ravens. I'm a little worried that the Ravens would take it, so I'm okay with making this trade. So I trade up with the Ravens. All it takes is a swap of 7th round picks. I swapped a 7th rounder from next year for a 7th rounder from this year. So I moved my pick 250 into next year. That's all it costs to move up one spot. That's pretty much nothing. And I took Jalen Peter, safety out of Baylor. Now, calling him a safety is kind of going to make it confusing because he's more of a safety nickel hybrid, or like a money backer would be maybe the call, or the money back would be the way that they called it at Baylor. It's a weird position that he played. He is not a safety in the way that Cam Bynum is a safety. And so you might be thinking, why would we take a safety? We have Cam Bynum. Well, A, we've only seen him play for 2 games, so I'm not that convinced about Cam Bynum. But B, this guy can coexist with Bynum in a way that actually turns into a really formidable pair. And C, Harrison Smith ain't getting any younger. We're going to need a replacement for him eventually. So if anything, this is Harrison Smith's heir apparent, and we're just drafting for the future. But he's a lot closer to a nickel corner or box safety hybrid thing. He compared himself to Budda Baker at the Combine, and that, I think, is pretty apt. He's got that versatility. He's got that, he's really good against the run, that kind of thing. He's really good at blitzing. He's just really good at attacking gaps and playing capture the flag in a way, playing Red Rover kind of I need to get to a place and you don't want me to be there. I can get past you and be more elusive and stuff. He's just really good at that game, instinctively. He's not going to stack up a tackle and shed him, but he's a defensive back. Why would you expect that? So the thing about him that is what's making him available down here is that he's not rangy and he's not really fast enough to turn and run with the guy. So you can't put him out at boundary corner or anything like that. And you can't exactly ask him to be a single high, rove the entire field safety. If you're doing that, that's probably Bynum in that role, and you're having Jalen Peter do something else. And that would probably be what the future looks like after Harrison Smith with this pick. All that said, it's just really exciting to watch him work near the line of scrimmage and to watch him just man up on guys in the slot. So I like this sort of hybrid nickel safety thing. I think it fits what the Fangio defense wants to do. I think it'd be really good as like the apex when you've got quarters on your half or something like that. And when you need to like play fit or freeze, when you need to rush a B gap, when you need to be part of run support, when you need to play pass first, but also be part of run support, you need to have that agility and explosion. He really fires and triggers off the ball. He triggers a little bit too hard sometimes and it makes him wrong sometimes, but that's kind of a common thing in young defensive backs and something you sort of work on with experience. You can't ask him to be a free safety, which is what you would ask Cam Bynum to do. You can't ask him to like man-to-man run with their like burner all the way down the field. And if you're asking your slot corner to do that, it's probably a bad idea anyways. Like he's not going to stick with Jameson Williams, right? But those are all things that we kind of already have guys to do. So this really, really helps solidify the middle of the field. And it means that playing corner is going to be a lot easier. You just have to play that sideline. And that's sort of what I'm putting the whole thing around. So basically after this, the entire board is guys that I had a 3rd round grade on. By like pick 55, I've got 3rd round grades on everybody. So I have no interest in trading up or moving up at all. In fact, I kind of just want to pick in this range as much as possible because there are way more 3rd rounders than there are 3rd round picks. You're going to get 3rd round people in the 4th round, maybe even in the 5th round. I think this is where the meat of the draft is. So I'm up at 77 and I'm up at 79 because of that trade with the Chargers. And remember, I also have a 7th rounder next year and a 3rd rounder next year that I've gotten from this draft. At 77, there is one guy that I really, really like. At the very top of the 3rd round is where I have him. And I'm at 77, kind of in the middle of it. And it's Leo Chenal. There are a lot of fly around linebackers in this draft. Guys that are they're not as physical. They're not as much of like downhill thumpers. They're not, old school thumper Mike linebackers. They're like the guys that have to deal with all the sweeps and smokes and screens and all this weird stuff that college spread offenses do. So they have to be able to go from like the middle of the field all the way out to the sideline. There's like 1,000 of these. If you want one of those guys, you can go for Christian Harris, you can go for Brian Asamoah, and you can go for Leo Chenal, who's one of them. He's not the rangiest guy. Quay Walker's my favorite of those, by the way. But I actually took Leo Chenal because Leo Chenal's got a little bit of oomph to him. And a lot of those run around, fly around the field kind of linebackers are missing that oomph, and they can't really stack and shed a block. And look, we live in a wide zone world where everybody's linemen can find those fly around linebackers. You got to get off of them. And Leo Chenal can get off of him, which is why I took him there. He's, I guess, depth, I guess, rotational. I don't know. Look, Jordan Hicks signed a 2-year deal, so he's not going to be around forever. Eric Hendricks isn't going to be around forever. He's approaching 30, and he's also expensive. So if this is an heir apparent for one of those guys, that's great. And there are also worlds where you need 3 linebackers on the field. I don't really know what you would call what he plays. You'd maybe call it like a Sam linebacker kind of thing. Maybe that'd be close to what like Anthony Barr would have done, but it's like an off-ball role. I mean, this is not like an outside linebacker thing like what you would have like Jermaine Johnson or Drake Jackson do here. So moving on to number 79, where I've got my Chargers pick, Houston called. So Breece Hall is on the board, as is Kenneth Walker. These 2 guys shouldn't have fallen this far. And they're running backs, and some of these mock sims are going to be like running backs only in the 3rd round. So I guess that's why they're there. But Houston is coming up for Breece Hall. That's who they ended up picking. I made this trade. So I actually got my 7th back. I got a pick number 245, and I didn't have to give up my 7th next year. So I got my 7th back, and now I just have an extra 7th round pick next year from all this trading down. And I only moved back 1 spot, and I lost out on Breece Hall, who I had no interest in anyways. So Kenneth Walker and Isaiah Spiller are also on the board, as well as a bunch of interior offensive linemen that are really exciting. Somebody who could maybe compete with Garrett Bradbury. We're going to get to that in a second. But San Francisco called. They are all the way down at 93, and they wanted to trade up. Their offer, well, I counter-offered. The offer I negotiated with them was a 6th for a 4th. So the opposite of the Chris Herndon trade. We traded a 4th for Chris Herndon and a 6th. We now traded down a little bit. We give the 6th to the 49ers, and we get a 4th from the 49ers. So we basically undid the Chris Herndon trade by trading down a little bit. And they actually took Dylan Parham, one of those interior offensive lineman guys. But I'm still looking for a corner. Jalen Peter is not enough. I still need a corner. So I'm sort of honed in on that. And I'm watching Cam Taylor-Britt and Kobe Bryant. And if one of them gets taken, I'll trade up using some of my late round stuff or that extra seventh. I didn't end up having to, though. And I ended up taking Kobe Bryant, who is named for Mr. Mamba. Yeah. That's on purpose. They named him like that. And he embraces that mentality. Of course, group idolizing Kobe Bryant. Of course he did. So he has that mentality. He's very much a man-to-man guy. The reason he's going to be here in the third is that everything about him athletically is like pretty average. He doesn't have crazy athletic traits, which means he's probably not going to be a CB1. And he was CB2 in Cincinnati next to Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner could be on an island, and Kobe Bryant kind of got to be the CB2, play that Trey Waynes role. And that's kind of what I want him to do here. We'll have Patrick Peterson play the first cornerback, and then we'll have Kobe Bryant probably compete with Cameron Dantzler for the guy who just needs to cover everybody's possession receivers, right? And when you're covering the Z on the backside of the formation, the possession receiver, the kind of second guy, Chris Olave was this at Ohio State. When you're covering that guy also tends to have more average but well-rounded athletic traits. So I think it's a good matchup. And that's why I've always liked Kobe Bryant as a guy at 77. Getting him at 93 and being able to trade down a bunch is closer in line with consensus. Consensus is a little bit lower on him than I am. So I'm really happy to get him lower than I thought I had to. So that's day 3. We've got 2 defensive backs. We've got Devonte Wyatt absolutely wrecking shop. And we also took Leo Chenal. So we have gone 4 defensive players. I think that's the move here. I mean, it's not hard and fast. Take a tight end, take a wide receiver if you want. But I think there's nothing wrong with doing that. But we'll see what happens next on day 3. Before we get into that, though, let me tell you about Built Bar. It is the best tasting protein bar on the planet. Built Bar is covered in 100% chocolate and absolutely delicious. When you wake up in the middle of the night with that kind of chocolatey craving, let me tell you, Built Bar is going to take care of you, and it's not going to knock you off the wagon. It's 130 calories in one of these things. That ain't too bad. 4 grams of sugar and then 17 grams of protein. So it can be good post-workout too. So head on over to built.com, check out all their awesome main series flavors like chocolate orange, chocolate raspberry, double chocolate brownie. There's a caramel one. There's cookies and cream one. They even have their Built Puffs, which is like a marshmallowy one. It's really, really awesome. So head on over to built.com, enter promo code LOCKED15, that's LOCKED15, and you can get 15% off at built.com. It is now day 3 here in the final mock draft Monday. I've picked up 4 defenders and essentially rounded out a lot of pieces of the defense here with the draft. I think the draft is doing a little more work on defense than I hoped it would. We're starting too many rookies, but that's more of a critique of free agency, and that's kind of what the draft has to be now. So let us continue. The next pick, I'm up at 134. This is the 4th rounder I got from San Francisco and all that trading down. And I am taking #MyGuyForever. I am so much higher on this guy than the entire world is, and I'm not going to apologize for it. It's Danny Gray out of SMU, wide receiver. This dude is 4.3 speed. He's tall, and he absolutely took over at SMU, and he was not supposed to. Reggie Roberson is their guy who also I thought about drafting. He's probably a 7th rounder. Reggie Roberson was supposed to be the guy at SMU, and he was coming back from injury, and it was supposed to be his year, and he was wide receiver 1, and he had a fine year. Danny Gray just exploded onto the scene. He knows how to run a route. I mean, he's not the most polished guy in the world, and he doesn't win at contested catches. He's a little lanky and stuff, but 4th round is where I want that kind of guy. This will take the top off the defense. Just send that dude on a go ball on the backside, and they probably have to help Cap with safety help because he runs 4.33. So you can actually occupy 2 defenders on that side. And then you have Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne on the other side. There's your 4 wide receivers, or, Thielen and Jefferson and Irv Smith. And good luck with all that. All those guys working in tandem. And the other side of the formation can just be Danny Gray. And you better not forget about him because he's going to be going deep. This is your take the top off the defense guy. That's what that role is. And I love getting him. You probably can get him in the 5th or 6th round. I'm probably reaching on him because I'm way higher on him than everybody else is. But I'm not going to apologize for that. I love Danny Gray and I want him to be a Viking. Next up is 156, the 5th rounder the Vikings have always had. And I'm taking my center competition here. So if you didn't hear, there's a report from Pro Football Talk that the Vikings are not going to pick up Garrett Bradbury's 5th year option, which you could have guessed. I don't know. That's not, yeah. That shouldn't affect the way that you're drafting, because you probably should have already been drafting, assuming that. So I've always been kind of trying to take like an interior guy here in rounds 3 or 4. I'm all the way down to round 5. Some other things sort of took precedent, right? So I end up getting Joshua Eziudu from North Carolina. We talked about him on Friday in my rapid fire draft sleeper thing. Whoever suggested him, thank you. This dude is absolutely #my guy now. He has an awesome athletic profile. He's like 308, so he's heavier than Bradbury. He's got 34-inch arms, so if 308 isn't enough, 34-inch arms can absolutely keep like a big stout nose tackle off of you. He's got all the explosion and stuff you need for a zone scheme. Like, he still is a scheme fit without the typical drawbacks you would have, and that's all just athletically. The thing is, he's a puppy, and he's got to learn some stuff. But I think he has enough footwork, and he's got enough of his technique down already that he like can still push Bradbury for the job. So I'm spending my 5th round pick to get a center here, and I absolutely think this guy can start and should be in a true competition with Garrett Bradbury, who's going to play out his last year and walk anyways. And even if he doesn't win, then he gets a redshirt year to kind of learn some more technique, and then hopefully he's ready to take over after Bradbury leaves, and we can get that problem solved. Get a little bit more sand in your pants, get a little bit more length at center, and you lose out on the Grim Reacher thing and all that stuff, but I think I don't think many of you are going to have a huge problem with that, and I really, really like this guy out of North Carolina. I don't think he should be available at round 5, but I think I'm a lot higher on him than most are. At pick number 184, remember we have 3 picks here in the 6th round, but I gave one of them away as part of trading up. I turned one of them into that 4th rounder. I am taking a tight end. Now, there are a lot of really better tight ends in the pass game that are going to get higher draft stock because people care way more about their tight ends in the pass game. The Vikings have Irv Smith, all right? They need a blocking tight end that can also be a route runner. I am taking a corn-fed Nebraska tight end in Austin Allen. This dude is a tenacious blocker. He's an awesome blocker, and that is his claim to fame, but he's also like a big target in contested catches and stuff. He's not going to be the guy that you throw up the seam or anything like that, and I don't need him to be that. I need him to be the guy in 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets, blocking and driving guys. I want latch and drive, a guy that can beat a linebacker and move him out of the way and be an asset in the blocking game. That's Austin Allen. At pick 191, I went with Malcolm Rodriguez, linebacker out of Oklahoma State, another guy that we talked about on Friday's show. Malcolm Rodriguez is going to be available down here because he has a really pretty crippling length issue. He's just not big enough to play NFL linebacker, but he's really, really instinctive. He knows where to go and he knows how to get there, and he's got good enough tackling for him. So I think he'd have a pretty big problem shedding blocks. Like, you wouldn't start him, and you're not expecting to get a starter here at pick 191. But I think he can do well enough, and he has enough special teams prowess that I think I would have taken him in the 5th round. I'm here in the 6th. He kind of maxes out to me as like bad starter, good backup. And if he can realize that, I think that's a great 6th round pick. And then the last pick I've got is pick 245. So usually it's pick 250. I moved my 7th rounder up 5 spots with all my trading. And I am taking Kevin Shaw, wide receiver out of Liberty. He is another quick guy. I'm drafting 40 times a little bit here. He's like I think he's a 4.38. He's 5'9", and he's kind of nothing, but he caught a bunch of bombs from Malik Willis. And I think that kind of put him on the map. And again, we're just trying to kind of get a guy to take the top off. And a little bit, this is a punt gunner. we're getting a punt gunner, and we can hope he can, use that leverage and be low and get low on people and wrap and tackle and learn all that stuff. Although at pick 245, I'm kind of just happy if the dude sneaks onto the roster. You definitely could have taken other guys here. I sort of just wanted to find a new fast wide receiver to talk about, but there were a lot of other people you could take. But I'm mostly focusing on somebody who can play on all 4 special teams units. So usually I would take like linebackers down in the 7th round and stuff like that, and kind of go for that. But I wanted a guy that can get down the field quickly. That's really what I was after. So there's the mock draft for you. That's the final mock draft. I'm not going to do any more mock drafts until the actual thing. So I hope you guys got your fill of them. Pretty fun stuff, right? Like, Devonta Wyatt you should be excited about the prospect of the Vikings getting Devonta Wyatt. If you're not excited about Devonta Wyatt, you just don't know enough about him yet. Like, he is super, super sick. And I feel like we pulled off a world where we draft him, but also get away with it in terms of like nurturing all our other needs. We have 2 cornerbacks that we can feel pretty good about, or 2 D-backs, I guess I'll call it, because Jalen Peters sort of a tweener. We got Leo Chenal, I think is a really interesting player that's kind of got you got to find a role for him, but I feel like the Ed Donatel defense has one somewhere in there. We got a couple of burner wide receivers. We got our blocking tight end. We got our Garrett Bradbury competition. We sort of checked off all the boxes we needed while also being able to just go get the only elite player that was really available to us, him and Jordan Davis. And we can just go get an elite guy on the front and really set that up, and then hope we have done enough at cornerback where all of that disruption on the front can make their job easy enough, and they just need to be able to play cornerback on easy mode. That's it. So let me know what you think of all of these mocks and Mock Draft Monday and stuff. Send me your mocks and stuff. I always give you a courtesy like if you send me your mock on Twitter. I will be back tomorrow with Twitter Tuesday. This should be a good one, right? So send me your questions. I'm way more familiar with prospects than I was even just a couple weeks ago. So send me your questions at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter, at Locked On Vikings on Twitter, LockedOnVikingsPodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send an email, there's a Google form in the show notes too, if you'd rather do that. I will see you all tomorrow with that. Check out the Ultimate Mock Draft and the Locked On NFL Draft YouTube page. And as always, Skol.